Hey, everybody. Welcome inside Lambeau Field. I am Ryan Wood alongside my colleague and beat partner, our columnist, Pete Dougherty. Welcome to our post-game live chat on Packers News. 24-10 today. I keep wanting to say 24-7. It's in my mind. I don't know why. 24-10, kind of the same game that I think a lot of us were expecting. I know I and you, we thought about 2 touchdowns coming in, an easy win. Not an overly impressive win. Alan Lazard said after the game, doesn't think anyone's real satisfied with this type of victory. But look, it was a slog. It was an easy win. They took care of it. 6 straight wins, 6-1. Now they go into the short week. That's what this today is really about.
Yeah, and LaFleur said that they already actually started the recovery stuff tonight. Players start that tomorrow. So I assume that means ice baths and maybe massages and who knows what else they're doing. And it's not just a Thursday game. It's what I'm assuming will be an unbeaten Arizona team.
They're up on the Texans, pretty big.
Okay, so they got that game. And then the week after is Patrick Mahomes.
Long week, but still.
Seattle with Russell Wilson possibly returning. And then I think Minnesota, who has beat them once last year. And then after that is one other.
LA's
the Rams.
Coming up.
The Rams is after that, and Matthew Stafford. So this is the meat of their schedule, and now we'll see how much the defense really has improved. We'll see if the offense keeps ascending. It's slowly getting better. It's still not playing at the level it did last year.
It's going to be hard to only talk about this game today because, as you just said, the teeth of the schedule is now, and they're getting into that. Even Matt LaFleur, I thought this was very interesting. Even Matt LaFleur after the game said, obviously, Preston Smith didn't play today. First time in his career against the team that drafted him, Washington in 2015, second round. First time his streak ends at 102. He played every game in his career. Matt LaFleur acknowledged, I'd be lying to you if the short week didn't play any factor. Here's the reality. They didn't need a full roster to beat Washington. They knew that. They wouldn't admit it before the game, kind of did after. They didn't need a full roster. Now they do. So that's huge. It looms over everything, but they needed to take care of business, and that's what they did. They did what they needed to do. 6 straight win. They're 6-1. They're fighting for mid-season supremacy in the NFC this week now. What were your thoughts overall on what you saw out there?
It was a hard game to kind of sum up, and it was just kind of a workmanlike win. They just kind of grounded out. Now, by grounding it out, I don't mean running the ball.
They didn't run the ball much.
No, they didn't, and they didn't run it well. Really good front, best front four. They're probably in the league, I would guess.
Well, them in Chicago, right?
And this team has 4 first rounders on their front four. But they just kind of grounded out, made the plays. Once they got up by 2 scores, you knew it was over. There's just, it's just going to be awful tough for, Taylor Heineke's a really game competitor and all that stuff, and he can run. But it's just really tough for him to get the ball in the end zone enough, once they're down 2 scores. Yeah,
we got a couple comments, one from Brian Buck on the offensive line giving up too many sacks, and also Michael kind of in sync with this. When is 69 ready to come back? I say, well, he will improve in that area. David Bakhtiari is eligible to return from PUP at any point. No surprise at all today. It would have been beyond shocking. What's the word beyond shocking? It would have been completely
ultra
stupefying.
Shocking.
Uber shocking if he would have played today. No one expected that. He needs at least a week, probably 2. I don't know that he's going to play against Arizona, but
I can't imagine. It's because they're not going to have any practices this week.
No, that's the problem. They don't have enough practice. So
I don't think it's a given. He plays the week after. I would get if I had to lay odds, I don't know if I'd go anything over 50-50.
Here's the interesting thing with that. They're going to have the long week going into Kansas City. Does Matt LaFleur prioritize resting everybody and not having extra practices because they don't have a bye week till early December, week 13, and they're going to need that mini bye? Or do they put an extra practice in there to try to get David Bakhtiari back quicker? Because that's really he's got to be able to practice to play.
Yeah, I would guess that he'd take the more panoramic view.
I guess too.
So the players probably have to be in town on Monday after the long weekend. They probably have meetings and things, but the actual practice load, I would think, would still be on the lighter side. Just health is so important, and it dictates so much of what you do. And he's one who appears to always err on the side of less is more.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that if Matt LaFleur has a choice, and he sets the practice schedule, he's going to err for giving rest and taking mileage off his players' bodies over the season. But to Brian's point about the offensive line as a whole, Matt LaFleur made this point after the game about the lack of continuity, consistency, chemistry, rhythm, whatever you want to call it on offense. It's been very disjointed, much more so than what we saw in 2020 last season when they led the league in scoring. And he said all the moving parts on the offensive line have a big part of that, and they do. I mean, it all starts up front. So when you have all that configurations going on up front, a different lineup almost every week, it's going to have a toll. Pete, I thought that the offensive line has done just about as well as you can. They finally, these last 2 weeks against Chicago, against Washington, they've run up against defensive fronts. They can't just throw anybody out there against and expect it to look right. These defensive fronts are very good.
And that's why Aaron Rodgers makes $33 million a year. Right? That's to be the difference maker in situations. I agree with you 100%. That line has been absolutely fine.
It helps when he can run too, right?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I had to go there.
Although he did have a scramble where he fell down on his own too. So
he did. Peter felt vindicated.
I saw Carl didn't see the game. The 175 yards rushing, Carl, 90 of those were by Heineke, and all but one was a scramble. So I wouldn't really call that part of the running game. I'd put those in the passing yards. Not to say the Packers' run defense was really good, because it wasn't, but it was okay. It's hard to make any strong statements about this defense. The strongest thing you can say is it's improved a lot since week 1, which is an extremely low bar, because that was atrocious.
Couldn't get any worse.
But the tests, we just talked about it. It's these teams coming up. It's Arizona, Kansas City, the Rams, the Seahawks. How can they handle these quarterbacks?
Here's what I would call those 95 rushing yards on 10 carries for Taylor Heineke. Significant. You know why? Kyler Murray's coming up next, and he will kill you if you do not have proper rush lanes and let him get outside the pocket with his legs. As Matt LaFleur said after the game, quarterback rush, that's a huge point of emphasis, especially after today, because you give up 10 for 95 against Taylor Heineke. That's 200 yards against Kyler Murray. That's what that is.
And the problem is Murray can wing it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a passer too.
He is.
So this will be a game where this will be just like last week against the Bears, where they're going to have to just rush to contain and not worry about sacking him so much, and just squeeze the pocket as best they can and try to get him that way, and do not let him get outside the pocket, because that's where he'll destroy him.
Michael says Tay Adams is just ridiculous at this stage. These catches and routes. Yeah, the catch off Kendall Fuller's helmet. That was a new chapter.
That's just we see play like that, maybe every 3 or 4 days in training camp, right, 3 or 4 practices, and it's just it's why Tom Silverstein, our colleague, had a good column about this a couple weeks ago about paying the guy, and it's all going to be about guaranteed money. And if they can't do it with a signing bonus, then they got to break precedent and give this guy guaranteed money in future years, like Pittsburgh did for TJ Watt. They broke their precedent too. The Packers, these precedents are, what do they mean? I mean, just because you give Adams that money doesn't mean you have to do it, or guarantee future salaries for him doesn't mean you have to do it for anybody else. I think they'd be making a pretty big mistake letting a guy this good go. I realize he's not super young. He's still 28. I mean, he's going to have at least a couple more exceptional years after this year, unless he gets hurt. So I'd pay him. I'm really surprised it hasn't been done yet. Maybe it'll be like Bakhtiari last year.
Here's the other thing I think, Pete, is that, yes, explosiveness at that position especially is very important. But Devontae Adams, because of the way he plays, it's not that he's not explosive, but it's precision, which is what his game's built on. Release packages, second to none in the league for the past few years. A guy like that's that precise, he stands the age more gracefully than most of your receivers. Yeah. He doesn't. He's not a guy that just counts on running by you every time with pure speed. So I think in no uncertain terms, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how he'll age. But I think in no uncertain terms, they must do what it takes to sign Devontae Adams. I don't know no wiggle room.
I don't know if we talked about this last week, but I think he's the guy he's most similar to, and a little better, maybe more than a little better than, from what I've seen, is Jordy Nelson. If you think back through Nelson's career, the thing that jumped out to me most about him was, and you only saw part of it, every year he was better than the year before. Every year until at age, I think he was 30 when he
tore his ACL, 2015.
So even at 29, even at 30 in that camp, he was having, it was an early injury in I think it was the first preseason game, but it was still second. It was still, they had enough practice in camp where this guy was still getting better because of the things you were talking about with Adams. You would think the same would be with Adams. I can't let this pass. Craig, opinion of Packers uniforms. This clown liked them. I definitely did not like him. I thought, as Lori Nickel, our colleague, said, it looked like Oregon. I just don't like the all green, and it's too light a green. The super dark green like the Jets have, and they're all green. I think those look okay. I'm not a fan of those. Not that the Packers' regular uniforms are beauties, because they're not, but those are their uniforms forever because the 60s Packers wore them, and they can never change that.
First of all, do y'all see how he talks to me? See what I have to endure? It's very painful. Secondly, you're right. This clown did. I did like the uniforms.
I guess I did.
You did. It's he calls me much worse off camera. It's fine. I'm not a threads guy. I'm not a uni guy. It
doesn't matter.
I don't care. But I thought they looked good. I mean, I just don't care.
I think Michael asked a really interesting, good question that I was thinking about. I wasn't going to bring it up, Michael, because I'm thinking about possibly writing about it this week. Don't know if I will or not. There's only one day of writing.
Scoop.
But what do? Kevin King comes back. He's ready to play. Douglas is better than I would have ever expected from a guy you sign off a practice squad.
And he can tackle.
He's there in cover. Even when they're completing balls on him, it's not like Adam where he's 5 yards away. I mean, he's usually right there. I think the guy looks okay.
I think Kevin King is still probably the better coverage guy. But here's why it's a big deal this week. And it's pretty – I mean, if they were going to say Preston Smith a week because of the short week, I think they did the same thing with Kevin King. I think he's going to be ready to go Thursday in Arizona. You got to tackle against Kyler Murray. You got to be able to tackle. Everyone on the field, all 11, you got to tackle. And Kevin King doesn't tackle. He doesn't tackle. Rasul Douglas, I mean, he got the worst end of that against J.D. McKissick, but he tackles. He can lay the wood. And you got to do that against Kyler Murray. So I think it's not the coverage to me. It's the tackling.
Alexander, key to a Super Bowl. I think Ryan and I are on the same page on this. He might be their most the defensive player they can least afford to lose. I think there's a really decent
number two overall.
Yeah, so it'd be Rodgers and then
Alexander,
and then
Adams.
I'd go Zadarius Smith probably still, because I just don't know that their pass rushes. They don't have a really good rusher after him. Although 52 is coming on.
And we haven't talked about it yet, but this is what I wrote about today. I just said I don't know what they have behind Devontae Adams. Today was progress in that direction. They got a good game from Robert Tonyan. They got a good drive from Allen Lazard. I still don't have any idea what possessed Allen Lazard in that drive before the half. He had in no game this season had more than 5 catches. He had 5 catches in that drive. A season high 60 yards in that drive. Only his second touchdown this season, all in one drive. It was huge for this, for this offense to be able to put some production on the board in the passing game. Other than Devontae Adams, they got to have more than that, and more of that, and they finally got some.
They did. Switch of subjects, Mike. I kind of agree with Mike to a degree. I think we disagree. We disagree a little bit on King's tackling. Because I think he was tackling fairly well. He's always been a willing tackler. He misses his share because too often he'll just throw a shoulder in there instead of doing the wrap up.
Kevin King tackled very well in Cincinnati. It was one game. He was the leading missed tackler on this defense the last 2 seasons, I believe, maybe the last 3. But definitely the last 2 seasons. He wasn't even that close last year, frankly, in terms of missed tackles. So
trade deadline is a week and 2 days away. Do you think they're going to add anybody via trade? Because you never know who they might end up signing as a street free agent or whatever. But
do you think they're going to add anybody? You're the columnist.
If I had
give your pitch.
If I had to bet right now, I'm going to say yes.
I think so.
I think they might add either. I think maybe a corner. maybe a corner.
Not a pass rusher.
I don't know if the Atlanta guys, if they can afford them at this point after even though the signings they just did are relatively cheap. I don't know if they could afford either of those other two guys. They got the two Atlanta guys, Grady Jackson and Grady Jackson.
Grady Jarrett.
Grady Jackson played for the Packers.
Similar.
Yeah.
Similar.
They are
Similar guy. Similar name.
And Dante Fowler is the pass rusher.
What a punt! What a punt by Boho.
Yeah.
Which one? The first one was like so disappointing to me because I don't know. I have high expectations. I love good punting. It's fun. And he kicks it 49 yards, perfect placement to the sideline, fair catch. And I'm like, man, I really wanted to see 82 again.
It seemed low. That was the only thing to me. But St. Brown did as the gunner beat his the guy blocking him by a mile, and the punt was so well placed on the sideline that St. Brown could just run right down the sideline, and he was basically right there when the guy caught it, so the guy fair caught it. That was really good coverage, saved a possible 5 to 15 yard return there.
It only got better from there, and you're right. There's been good gunner coverage this season. It's been much better than years past. That should be said. But only got then a 53-yarder out of his own end zone for a fair catch. And then this is the second straight week I saw a punt I've never seen before. The 82-yarder, I've never seen a punt like that. And then he drops it on the 6-inch line. I mean, it was
even closer than that.
It was like when you're watching Wimbledon and you need to get the replay on whether or not the ball hit the line or not. Was it an ace? Was it not? Is it out? Is it a fault? You don't know. Zoom in and see. That's what you had to do to see if he dropped it on the goal line or 3 inches to the goal. I've never, and then it hits the perfect bounce to the. I've never seen that before. That was unbelievable.
That was.
He's fun. He's fun.
Is this Steve is wondering? Steve Benson, is this looking like the 2010 team? It's more like the 2010 team than the 11 team or last year because both of those teams were dominating. This team is scrapping through. Now the difference is, I'd have to look at this time, back in 2010. I don't know. They might have been 4-3 at this point. I know at one point they were 8-6, and then they won 4 straight, I think, to finish the season out, if I remember right. So they finished 10-6. So this team is winning a little more, but it's kind of feeling the same where it's not like they're out there dominating anybody. But that can happen at the end of the season where things just really come together for a team because of health reasons or whatever else. That one, I think it was just that team maturing. They had a lot of young guys who became stars. This team, the guys are more established, but they have a lot of people hurt. So maybe there is that kind of run in the Packers stretch, barring key guys getting hurt.
I wasn't
beyond this.
I wasn't here in 2010, but I wouldn't think that it would feel like 2010 because that 2010 team was a 6 seed. And now this team ain't going to be a 6 seed. It's not a 6 seed team. You know what it feels like to me? It feels like 2019. It doesn't feel like 2020. It feels like 2019 where their identity, they're not doing anything exceptionally well, except they're winning every game, which is the point. That's the entire point is to win you play to win the game, and they're winning the game. 2019, that's what they did. They didn't do anything exceptionally well. They just went 13-3 NFC Championship game. I don't see, especially if they get full strength, do you see a killer fatal flaw in this team that we saw in 2019 with the defense and the run defense? So I don't know that I see a killer fatal flaw. Even their defensive front, which I thought might be it, they've done better than I had expected, those depth guys.
They have. I'm still not sure, though, because it still gets a lot tougher. I'm still not sure the D-line is good enough. It definitely has played better, and Kenny Clark is even playing on a bum ankle now. He's a really, really good player. But I'm still not sure about the defense, and we'll have a better. We won't know everything you need to know because things will change from now till January. But over the next month, we'll get at least a better sense of whether this defense can get stops against good quarterbacks and good offenses.
I'm very interested to see that. Scott Foster says, let's hear it from Big Dog. And you're right, Scott. He's caught now 9 of 10 passes from Aaron Rodgers this season. He's up over 100 yards. He's almost matched last season's receiving output. Let's hear it for tight ends in general, though. right?
They're going to lose the element of surprise with him if they keep throwing it to him, because that's what's kind of working in his favor. Teams just think, well, there's no way they're throwing it to him.
And nobody wants to tackle him, apparently, because he is just bouncing off tacklers. But Robert Tonyan also today, he had I've been saying it the last few weeks, what's the issue with the red zone offense? 17 and 85 ain't scoring. That's been the issue with the red zone offense. Today, Devontae Adams, 17-yard touchdown. Robert Tonyan, 20-yard touchdown. Last year, those guys they tie a single-season franchise record for most touchdowns catches for receiver and tight end at their position in franchise history. They combined for 29, 21 of those in the red zone. That's your red zone production. Today, you get 2 red zone touchdowns from the guys that you got to get. So tight ends in general, and obviously the playmakers got into the end zone at scoring plays.
Pac-1, are you the only one who feels they need a stud wide receiver or another DT? I'll agree completely on the DT. I disagree on the receiver. For one, the price of a stud receiver would be astronomical anyway. But the receiving core is good enough. Look, I know 83 has had his issues dropping the ball, a lot less this year before he got hurt than in the past. But his ability to stretch a defense, teams have to honor him deep, and if they don't, then he's good enough to get downfield and make them pay fast enough to. The big plays and the threat both help win games. 13, Lazard is okay. He's not bad. He's a good possession receiver. Tonyan has been underutilized to now. But the thing we all need to remember is, so today was game 7. I mean, we're not even halfway through the schedule yet. I mean, the numbers and the stats can change so much between now and the first game. The last game is January 9th or something like that this year, right? Things can change a lot between now and then. I have to think Tunyan's numbers are going to even up, and he's going to end up with his share of catches, his share of touchdowns. Maybe it won't quite match last year, but his numbers are going to spike.
To your point, I agree. Really, the only trade I would make, and I even include corner in this, the only trade I'd make is for a defensive front edge rusher or defensive tackle. That would be the position.
Pac-1 came back with he doesn't want to spoon feed Adams all day, and I can't disagree with you there. It's going to take spreading the ball around, and that's basically what happened today, right? I mean, Adams had his couple spectacular plays, and a couple times where he stung him, but Lazard and Tonyan made their plays today. I got to think that's what we saw today is probably a little more like what the rest of the season is going to look like, except they're going to run the ball more against most teams. I think this was just a game where between that really good front and the Packers' offensive line health, they just couldn't. It just wasn't working.
And that's what Kelsey wants to know, and that's where we're going to go to next is why do they refuse to pound the rock? Hey, you know what? Before today, they had 3 straight games of 130 yards combined between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. This was an anomaly. Why? Did you see that defensive front? They're really good. And that's not your top offensive line either. Today was Aaron Rodgers getting the ball and slinging it around because they're not going to run it between the tackles against that defensive
something
front.
to remember with these upcoming games against these really good quarterbacks, those quarterbacks aren't going to have a defense that has that front four in front of them too. So one of the things I would think the Packers will want to do against all these guys is run the ball and keep their own defense off the field.
4-minute offense attack. Let's end it here with Rick Ramos. I will be at the GB versus AZ game. What is the number one factor GB needs to win? You know what? What do you think?
Well, there's probably 2 ways of kind of looking at this. Yep. They're both Kyler Murray centric.
Yep.
And I'm going to say keep the ball out of his hands, which means running the ball, controlling the clock. But there's another answer that's just, and that's keeping him in the pocket.
Keeping them in the pocket. They're going to have to score more points. And I don't mean it in the facetious way. I don't mean it like, duh. I don't think – look, I was stunned that Washington only scored 10 points today. If that's Arizona's offense out there, like Washington put on a clinic for how not to score in an NFL game. And give the Packers credit. They went against a bad offense and they made plays, but that's not a bad offense that Kyler Murray runs. They're going to give up points in Arizona. They're giving up points in the desert. They're going to have to score points. I think it's going to be something of a shootout.
Yeah, they're obviously at their best with their weaknesses on defense where they get up early. And that keeps they keep scoring. and that keeps the pressure on the offense they're playing against. And that's where just getting one stop and getting up by 2 scores can make all the difference in the world. That's all it takes is one stop.
Let me ask you one more thing about today before we go, because I got to know. Talked about Washington putting on a clinic for how not to score the football. Taylor Heineke scored 2 touchdowns in 2 plays. Don't hate me, Packers fans. I'm just here to speak the truth. Don't hate me. That's the reason I put this at the end. So you can yell at me all you want later. Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
Thank you. We always agree on everything. That's what Pete and I do.
No, there's a good argument. He scored on both of those.
He scored on both. All right. I don't know. I'm just saying. I already didn't know what a catch was. For a long time I haven't known what a PI was, and now I have no idea what a touchdown is. This is the NFL for you in 2021.
That's the replay system as it stands.
All right. Well, make sure you go to Packers News. Despite our opinion that Taylor Heineke scored twice in 2 plays today, and he got credit for neither of them, for full coverage of Washington, the big win, 6th straight win today, and this is a big week coming up. It's going to be one of those fun weeks to see what this defense, especially what this team is really made of out in the desert. So PackersNews.com for full post game coverage and through the week. He's Pete. I'm Ryan. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.